Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Effective Insurance Cover for the Promotional Products Industry by Drew Fisher. Today, you're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you'd prefer to join over the phone, select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions to Drew by typing them into the questions pane on the control panel, and they'll be answered at the end. Drew has 25 years experience providing insurance advice and risk management education to associations. He also has more than 10 years of international insurance experience, which has provided him an excellent platform to offer associations his worldly knowledge. For association CEOs, Drew is arguably the most well-connected insurance professional in Australia. Drew and his team of insurance professionals offer a national solution to their customers with access to over 180 insurance practices located all over Australia and New Zealand. They have extensive skills in designing, administering and managing market-leading insurance solutions direct to associations and their members. I'll now hand you over to Drew.
Thank you, Kate, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for putting up some time for today's webinar. We're going to get through some fairly detailed information, particularly around the legal definitions and implications which support effective insurance coverage for your industry, and then we'll get into mostly speaking in depth about what we believe is effective cover that is required by your industry. You can see on your screens now that we've provided you with the presentation, and we'll just go through some of the things that we'll talk about today. We'll briefly talk about Association Insurance Australia and New Zealand, our partnership with APA. As I mentioned before, the meaty part of the presentation today will be really points 3 and 4, which will be about the legal and insurance definitions, and certainly, importantly, the considerations of what we believe is effective cover for your industry. We'll provide you with an exciting update about what is coming up in regards to our partnership with APA and what we'll be doing over the next 6 months. As Kate said, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation, and then of course we will provide you with our contact details. So Association Insurance Australia, as indicated, we are the Association Insurance people. We're the only insurance and risk advisory company in Australia and in New Zealand that solely focuses in on the needs of our association partners. Once we have understood what the association needs in regards to their effective cover and how they like to distribute their insurance provisions to their members, we then set about actually designing a solution for their members. Nothing that we do with all of our associations and their members is, if you like, off the shelf. We actually specifically design a bespoke arrangement in regards to insurance coverage, distribution, engagement and marketing through all of our individual association partnerships. Effectively, that's put us into a position over the last 12 months of designing and now distributing a trading name of promotionalproductsinsurance.com. That trading name is live, it's active, and it's active in Australia and in New Zealand. As I said at the start, there will be some exciting things that I'll introduce you to at the end of the presentation in regards to what that particular trading name is doing for our partnership with APA and also for their membership. What we also do, not only just we've designed and now distributed a trading name, we've also designed an insurance scheme. That word scheme is synonymous within our insurance industry. It's virtually the design of a particular product that represents the industry very effectively. We then administer that through APA into the membership. And then we continually engage with the membership, and you'll see a lot of that engagement improvement over the next 6 to 12 months. So if you like, let's get into it. Australia, our partnership with APA has a really excellent requirement where we have representation right across Australia and New Zealand. Kate introduced you to the numbers of our access to insurance officers. Association Insurance Australia, and indeed Promotional Products Insurance.com, is a part of the Insurance Advisor Net corporate environment. That gives us the ability to access 180 insurance officers right across Australia and New Zealand. Why that's really important is the fact that if any APA member requires face-to-face service, we will have a insurance office and representative representing Promotional Products Insurance.com right next to where that APA member is. There are no other businesses, no other insurance businesses in Australia that has that distribution reach. Some of our internationals that we certainly compete against have around about 25 to 30 offices around the country. With 180, we believe that that is going to be a significant advantage of face-to-face engagement with the APA membership. I'd like to introduce you to a high-level overview of our strategy that we've put together for APA, and this is the things. Some of these things will be rolling through over the next 6 to 12 months. We've established a segmentation in regards to the market, and the market in this requirement, I guess, is twofold. Twofold being, one, the insurance market, but also very importantly, the APA membership. In regards to the insurance market segmentation, what we've gone and set out to do is design a particular product, an insurance product that is going to be representing very effectively in regards to cover and pricing for your industry. Now, there are no other insurance providers, whether it be direct to the consumer or through a broker relationship, that has actually done that. Now, the segmentation back into the APA membership, what we're doing with APA is exclusively engaging with the APA membership around this insurance product and the engagement strategies that we're providing. But also importantly, we're attempting to educate not only just the membership, but also all the subscribers to APA as well to become members. This is really important because we want to make sure that in Australia and in New Zealand, the products that are being provided to the consumer have gone through a rigorous process of having effective insurance cover and also meet the requirements of the APA membership as well. We've developed a brand, promotionalproductsinsurance.com. It's becoming quite well aware now, and we've certainly got good capability behind not only just the logo, but we're designing certain things that will support that brand, and I'll touch on that shortly. Our insurance product, we actually designed the product as a broker. We then went and tendered that product to the insurance market in Australia and separately in New Zealand. And we selected the most appropriate and secure underwriting companies to support our needs for the APA membership. Now, that's quite different to what happens in the marketplace now. Effectively, what normally happens is that insurance brokers will go to the underwriting companies and ask basically what they have for the broker to distribute. So we've taken that a very different approach here, where we've designed, as a broker, we've designed the product itself and then gone and tendered that product to the market. And we see that being a very, very advantageous position to have for the membership, because we know that this product, as I said in my introduction, is that it's not off the shelf. It's actually particularly designed and will be responsive to your industry. On an annual basis, we ask our insurers to make sure that their pricing is very competitive. There's no point in us coming in at a very effective and very cheap price and then having to listen to the insurers increase their pricing over the course of the time. So we have a pricing guarantee with our insurer for our APA membership that is effective for 5 years. So we go through on a quarterly basis a pricing model distribution with the underwriters that are in place for our partnership, and effectively keeping them to our pricing model pricing. We all claims are handled by our office, and again, that's quite different. What you'll see in most insurance arrangements is that claims are actually administered from the underwriting company's office. Association Insurance Australia manages all claims for their clients, and we see that as excellent advocacy, because we are as we should be, is the advocate of the client, not the underwriter. And so by making sure that there is no prejudicing going on from the client direct to the underwriter, we make sure that we're involved at the get-go, and we ask all of our clients to register claims through us, and we will, on behalf of the client, then start to engage with the insurers. We have very strong marketing and distribution capabilities. Our marketing team is growing in numbers basically by the month, which is excellent. That means that we've got very upmarket, very modern and very good techniques of engaging through different marketing channels and the like. And our distribution capability, as mentioned before, can be distributed through up to 180 offices right around Australia and New Zealand. And we've got some very exciting online capability coming up as well, to which I will give you a mention later on. This is, I guess, this slide and also the next slide coming up is really the chunky part of our webinar today, and it's really around some really important things that all APA members and subscribers to the industry as well should really understand clearly. Of course, legal and insurance should always hold hands. That means that making sure that you have got a good understanding of your legal implications to the industry, but also that you understand how those legal requirements could affect where you sit in the supply chain of what you do, and ultimately how others can be affected of your involvement in the supply chain. Now, backed up on the legal requirements of that is effective insurance cover. Effectively, if there are legal requirements, very, very importantly, you should always have effective insurance cover. Now, if those two critically important elements of operating a business in your industry are not holding hands, as I've referred to, or if they're not complementing each other, then there are gaps either in your understanding of the legal requirements and or there are gaps in the effective cover that you should have in place. So there is a fair bit we'll go through, particularly on this slide. So this slide will stay on screen for a few moments, and I'll be going through some of those requirements with you right now. So there are three main legal sources of product liability in Australia and New Zealand, and our relationship and, if you like, partnership with a leading law firm, Hall & Wilcox, has put us into a very good understanding and position to develop excellent, I guess, information and in layman's terms for you to understand some of those requirements of your industry. So three areas of product liability, and they are common law of negligence, and effectively that is modified by each state-based legislation. Contract law, which includes statutory implied contractual terms, and of course legislation which is governed by the Australian consumer law. There is both a private and public dimension to product liability enforcement in both Australia and in New Zealand. Private civil claims can be brought by persons who suffered loss. However, the ACCC, as the relevant regulator, has a very, very broad public remit that will see it taking action independently of the people who have suffered loss or on behalf of a person who has suffered a loss. Now, there are four main areas of participation in the product supply for APA members and where they can be involved. I'll go through them individually now, which is, the first one is the manufacturer's liability of defective or dangerous goods. Now, a manufacturer may be liable for negligence on the basis that they owe a common law duty to take care to prevent foreseeable harm being suffered by consumers in connection with the use of the manufacturer's products. Now, very importantly, in Australia, the definition of a manufacturer is very broad, and this is supported by the ACCC. And like I said before, this is also very important because the insurance definition of a manufacturer is very, very similar. Now, the definition of a manufacturer in Australia, now this goes right across, in our belief, right across the APA supply chain. An importer, distributor, and or manufacturer, and any other participant in the supply chain who modifies the product, including relabeling, has a duty of care that may arise in respect of those modifications. And so what we've seen a lot is comments coming back from the APA members about, I don't manufacture, all I do is change logos in regards to the ordering of their particular client. Clearly, the legal definition of a manufacturer and supported by the insurance definition of a manufacturer picks up any variation to that original product. And indeed, where there is a supplier or distributor of a particular product, and that supplier or distributor in Australia and or New Zealand is the only supplier of that product in those countries, irrespective of where that product was originated from, that supplier or distributor is deemed as the manufacturer. So there are two courses of understanding here. Is that one is that if you are sit in the supply chain as a distributor or supplier or indeed a retailer, and you are the only importer of a particular product, and that product goes out into the market, you will be deemed as the manufacturer by the ACCC. And then secondly, and arguably more importantly, is that where there is any change to that original product, whether you are the only distributor or supplier or retailer of that product, if you have changed that product in any regard, you could be and will be involved in a possible negligence should that product be defective or be deemed as a dangerous good that goes out into the marketplace. Secondly, under still manufacturer's liability and defective of dangerous goods, liability may also arise where the manufacturer has a contractual relationship with a party who suffers a loss as a result of the defective product. That actually means that where you have signed, if you're a supplier or distributor or retailer and you have a contractual relationship with the manufacturer, that we often see that actually moves any negligence or presumed negligence away from the manufacturer to the supplier, distributor or retailer. It's very, very important that you understand the contractual arrangements that you're signing, because indeed what we've seen a lot is that manufacturers, particularly overseas manufacturers, are actually moving the liability from their responsibility over to the supplier, distributor or retailer. And then there's also still under the manufacturer's liability, there's a potential liability under the constrained consumer law where a product is deemed to be not safe as what is a person who is entitled to expect, and that product causes injury or death. Now that there is in Australia, particularly in Australia, slightly different in New Zealand, is that you have an obligation wherever you sit in the supply chain to provide a product to the industry that is deemed to be safe and not defective and not a dangerous good. And so effectively what that means is that as a supplier, retailer or distributor in the supply chain, if a product is out into the marketplace and it is deemed to be defective or dangerous or does cause an injury to a third party, irrespective of where you believe you sit in that supply chain, there could be a percentage of the liability attributed to your involvement in the sale of that product. So you just cannot say that, look, I just imported the product from overseas, I didn't touch it, or in fact we relabeled it and it was sent out into the marketplace, and therefore I'm not really responsible for the liability that that defective product has caused. You are involved in the supply chain, and it would be up to a third party to understand the legislation, and then that for that third party, particularly around the ACCC's involvement, or whether you could be deemed liable, and importantly, of what percentage you would be deemed liable. Okay, let's move on to number 2, which is importers, distributors' liability of defective and dangerous goods. An importer or distributor that does not manufacture relevant products will generally only be exposed to common law negligence claims, where there is a known responsibility of the risk in relation to the defective good. However, I did mention before that an importer, distributor and or manufacturer or any other participant in the supply chain who modifies the product, including relabeling, labeling, changing of logos, has a duty of care, and that may arise in respect of any of those modifications. So once again, whether you do sit as currently as an importer and or distributor or supplier of a good into Australia, and indeed if you are exporting any of those products outside of Australia, there is a duty of care, particularly if you are changing that product in any way, shape or fashion. And that just includes something simple as relabeling it from the manufacturer's label to your label, or indeed you're relabeling in accordance with your client's requirements where they've actually asked you to put their label on the product. You're actually still involved in the supply chain, and you do have an obligation around a duty of care. So you may not be completely 100% liable for any action that comes across, but you could be, by as a percentage, effectively involved in the liability action against your business. Continuing on with importers and distributors, there is a liability for manufacturers under the Australian consumer law as to what happens to a person who is entitled to expect a product to be not faulty and to be deemed not a dangerous good. Deemed manufacturers, and I've explained what a deemed manufacturer is, includes persons who hold themselves out as a manufacturer, use their own brand in relation to the goods or import goods where the actual manufacturer does not have a place of business in Australia. Liability cannot be contractually limited or excluded. Consumer guarantees also potentially apply to deemed manufacturers. So once again, it's recapping again, where you may think that you sit within the supply chain, there is a legal obligation around your involvement in that product as it goes through its course of life. So if you are involved in any way, shape or form, from manufacturing right through to distribution, including all of the other supply chain involvement, you do have a legal obligation. And we want to make sure that you are clear on that, and that effectively your insurance cover covers you for that. Now, the last one we'll talk about is product recall. Again, this really goes in support of what we've just discussed about those first three participation items. Whereas if there is a defective product, dangerous product, or indeed a product for whatever reason needs to be recalled out of the marketplace, and you've been involved in that supply chain, you have an obligation to ensure that product is removed from circulation and indeed removed from the consumer to prevent any further harm to or potential harm to that consumer. Now, Association Insurance Australia has conducted a fairly lengthy involvement with the ACCC, with APA. Now, I guess the highlight out of that was the ACCC were very forthcoming to say that what they look at in regards to product recall is the attitude of the individual businesses that are involved in the supply chain. They really actually honed in on what they would expect from a business that is involved in the supply chain and how they would go about attempting to recall a particular product. What they do come down on, and what they did mention several times, was if there is a poor attitude from that business in Australia and in New Zealand, is that that's when they come down on hard to say that, well, look, if you're not willing to recall that product, if you're just saying that you have no involvement in the supply chain, where clearly that you do from what we've just discussed previously, then the ACCC have the powers to be involved and heavily come down on that business due to their poor attitude towards resolving the problem. If the business goes about in all attempts to recall that product out of the marketplace and tries to assist in that process, the ACCC will be quite forthcoming and be somewhat lenient towards making sure that that product is removed out of circulation as quickly as possible. Of course, product recall is a very, very important aspect of your insurance cover, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. The last point on this slide is around the insurance definition of a manufacturer. Now, coupled with what I've explained before, where there is any involvement of the supply chain, whether you are the sole importer of a particular product or you've actually changed that product in accordance with your requirements or the accordance of your client's requirements, the insurance definition of a manufacturer picks up that you are the manufacturer. So changes to the product or you're the sole importer of that product, you are deemed from an insurance perspective as the manufacturer. Now that's really, really important, because what we see a lot over the last 12 months with the APA members, that there is a commonality of a perception that I'm not the manufacturer, all I do is slightly change the product, or indeed sometimes I don't even touch the product. It just goes from the manufacturer overseas to possibly a holding warehouse and then onto the end client. So all those involvements, there is a percentage and up to 100% possibility that that individual business involved in the supply chain from an insurance perspective would be deemed as the manufacturer. Some of that feedback that we're getting from our perspective is quite alarming. There is a very clear perception that the liability for this industry can be passed back to the original manufacturer, and that on most occasions could be a manufacturer in Asia. The difficulty with that perception is that of course that could possibly happen. However, the action will come in most cases back to the last point or the last business involved in the supply chain. That actually means if you're involved in the supply chain and you are possibly the last business involved where you've actually provided those products to your end customer or to the consumer, you have an obligation. And we've gone through that previously in today's webinar, but you have an obligation to that consumer to make sure that you have effective insurance cover. Now, effective insurance cover, whilst you're deemed as the manufacturer, means that you must have and should always consider having at least effective cover for your industry, making sure that you understand the definition of what you should have in place as your insurance cover. Now that I guess moves on nicely to where not to be confused with the definition from an insurance perspective of a manufacturer, but the definition of your business activities that are on your insurance schedule or any other insurance documentation. Now, I would estimate that what we've seen over the last 12 months, at least 90% of everything that we've seen has an incorrect definition of the activities of the particular business that is insured. Now, they range from quite alarming examples of where there's no representation of things like product distribution, relabeling, labeling, product manufacturing, retailing, distributing, supplying, etc. All those things are really important that they need to be on your insurance schedule. And the reason being is that if you are using a broker for your current insurance requirements, on most occasions, if not all, that insurance schedule that you have actually relates to a free type arrangement where the broker has actually free typed into and explains the definition of your activities. The insurer, the underwriter that actually covers your risk, needs to clearly understand what business activities that you actually provide. Now, if that is not exactly what you do, it's really important that that needs to be fixed up, because we have seen and we do continually see where the underwriting companies or the insurer has declined claims because they're unaware of the activities of the business that they're insuring. And so where we've seen clearly some examples where some of the APA members have been involved in that supply chain and can be and would be deemed as the manufacturer to some regard, manufacturing has not been included as an activity of that business. Now, if under investigation following a claim or incident, the insurer has got the legal right to decline a claim based on the fact that they were not aware of the activities of the business. Now, yes, I've heard back many times, well, we'll just go back to our broker because our broker should have known that. What that would clearly do would implicate your business. It's a significant distraction to your business. And at the end of the day, there is a consumer out there that needs to be remedied or rectified to the claim or incident that they've reported back to you. So does your business really want to go through that hardship? It's best to fix it up at the start of the relationship with your insurance provider, making sure that you are very comfortable with what you are doing is replicated on all of your insurance documentation. Then should there be a claim, then you should be comforted by the fact that you would be covered. Now that moves on to, I guess, some of the really critically important aspects of the insurance coverage, which is property. Now, some of these things are actually generic coverages, but really importantly for your industry, they've got to be specific. And again, this goes on to lead on from the activities being described exactly of what you do as a business, and then having the effective cover. Now, property, what we've seen a lot, now common things under here would be building. Now, this is property, could be known as fire and perils as well, or similar definitions. But under this, it's really important that you have your activities, again, insured effectively. Now, there's no legal requirement to have your property insured, but if it is insured, it's got to be insured for at least 80% of the replacement cost of that property. Now, property can be buildings, contents, plant equipment, stock, and in some occasions, consumer or third-party goods. Now, the reason why that's got to be insured for at least 80% of their replacement value is the fact that there is an underinsurance, or more technically, a co-insurance clause that makes you, if you like, liable to ensure that if there is a loss to your property or a claim to your property, that the insurer is covering at least 80% of the replacement value, and therefore you would not be deemed to be underinsured. Now, very alarmingly, under the property section, stock of your promotional products should be covered on at least 60% of the time. We see that stock is specifically excluded under the property section. Now, I would think as a business owner in your industry, stock, whether it's yours or a third party's, should be covered under the property section. It's something you should really sort of look keenly at. Again, same example under the theft section, or burglary section, sometimes that's known as, is that we've seen stock specifically excluded. Now, that means if there's a theft or attempted theft or burglary to your premises, and either your stock or your third party stock is damaged or stolen, that there is effectively no cover. Now, that also couples with the fact of making sure that you've got the exact coverage that you need for your industry. Very importantly, that third point, public liability, and if you like, the fourth point, they also should be holding hands. Public liability, effectively in layman's terms, is the bodily injury damages caused to a third party where negligence has been on the behalf of the insured. It actually means that if you have, as a business owner, caused and negligence has been proven, bodily injury to a third party, you would be held responsible. Products liability is very similar. It's about the fact if your product has caused bodily injury to a third party, then you would have effective cover. But this all goes back to and has ties into what we first said on that top of that slide there, is that the definition of your business activities needs to be supportive of what your liability coverages need to cover. There's a commonality here where we see there's a customer's goods covered here for example, for $250,000. Again, any liability coverage, there has to be proven negligence. So if you're holding stock on behalf of a third party, whether it be the manufacturer or supplier, distributor, or indeed your client, and there has been no negligence on behalf of your business to damage that product, then there's no cover. So that's where you would need to have that property and or theft cover customers' goods. And so if there's no negligence under product liability and negligence caused by your business to that particular product, there's no cover. Professional indemnity, in layman's terms, is damage caused to a third party, whether it be economic or bodily injury caused by your advice. Now, advice can be defined as being website material, verbal advice, written advice, email advice, whatever the advice that's been provided to your customers. If that advice causes an economic harm or in fact leads to a bodily injury, professional indemnity is the cover that you would need. So where we do see a lot of interaction with the APA members to their clients and indeed to their suppliers or distributors or manufacturers, where there is advice being provided by the APA member, that advice can only be covered, or damages by that advice can only be covered under professional indemnity. It's really, really important. So it's not just the actual outcome of a bodily injury claim. This is actually covering you for advice that's been provided to a third party. Now, freight insurance is a really interesting one. We've seen a lot where APA members have taken up the insurance provided by the actual logistics company. As you would expect, that insurance is not in the name of the APA member. It's actually in the insured, if you like, is the logistics company. And there are significant exposures of doing that. One, it might be cheaper at the time. However, where there is an issue with some freight that's being transported in any transport mode around the world, or indeed Australia or New Zealand, if there's an issue with that particular product or the freight carrier at the time, you will always have to go back to the freight company, to the logistics company to understand the features and benefits of the policy, and rely, if you like, on that logistics company representing you and or your economic or product loss. By moving that requirement over to yourself and your business, by taking your own freight insurance cover, you take full responsibility of that. And so similarly to any other insurance product that you would take on, you are the insured. That's a significant difference to you being involved underneath the logistics company insurance policy. They are the insured, you are not. Under your policy, you are the insured and they are not. So all features, benefits and cover would be provided directly back to the insured, that being the APA member in this case. And that is a by far better way to have effective cover under freight insurance. And one example that what we've put together on behalf of our partnership with APA for freight insurance is that it's worldwide cover. It's a very effective cover, very, very competitive in regards to premium. And in regards to a statistic, the quotes that we've actually provided to APA members for freight insurance, we've had a 92% effective conversion of those quotes. That means more than 9 out of 10 APA members have actually taken on that individual policy because of how it's effective, how it's distributed, and how cost effective it is. So I'd really encourage you to look at that by changing the obligation away from the logistics company back to yourself as a business owner. Of course, all of this and more, association insurance through our trading name and APA partnership of Promotional Products, Insuranc.com, will provide all APA members a no obligation assessment of their current insurance arrangements. And of course, we will provide a quotation based on what we believe the APA member needs, free of charge. We are, of course, obligated to give you our best cover and our best price on all occasions, and we look forward to actually doing that for you. So there's some exciting things coming up. Promotional Products, Insuranc.com will be at all of the roadshows nationally, and of course we'll be at Convex in New Zealand, Convex in Australia. And by the time Convex Australia comes around, you'll be seeing some really, we've used the word funky, but we've you'll be seeing some really, really modern, engaging marketing engagement techniques. So we'll be using things like whiteboard animations, short info commercials and things like that. And as an APA member, you'll be provided all of that information, which will give you, I guess, a modern look at how we engaging with our customers through our partnership with APA. At the same time, for Convex in Australia, our new promotionalproductsinsurance.com website will be launched. It will be launched at APA. So that will be, if you like, a central environment for all information regarding to our partnership with APA, but also a lot of the information that we've provided to you today and some really good education and risk management concepts about how you should be looking at your business. And it's really quite specific to your industry. It's not high level. It's actually really focused in on the needs of the promotional products industry. Our website, when launched at Convex Australia, will also include our new APA member insurance portal. Now, it's taken a good 12 months to build this, but it is the only portal of its kind in Australia and New Zealand. APA members, through a secure environment, will be able to, if you like, hop online, access through the promotionalproductsinsurance.com website. They'll be able to update their own details for their existing insurance arrangements, but also, very importantly, through minimal questions, and we believe that might be only up to 10 questions at this point, they'll be able to get a full quote for their insurance requirements for their industry. They'll be able to bind that policy, they'll be able to pay that policy through different mechanisms, and they'll be also able to get all of their insurance documentation sent to them once the policy has been paid for online, and that would include a certificate of currency across all the different coverages. So that's a really, really important aspect of what we'll be launching this year for our business partnership with APA. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. That concludes our webinar for today. That's, I guess, the significance of our partnership. We trade in Australia as Association Insurance Australia and in New Zealand as Association Insurance New Zealand, which is an independent company. We have resources in New Zealand for our New Zealand colleagues. Our head office in New Zealand is in Parnell, Auckland, and our head office for Association Insurance Australia in Australia is in Camberwell. Our trading name for our partnership is promotionalproductsinsurance.com, and we have an exclusive arrangement with APA to provide those provision of services through to not only just APA, but importantly to all of their members. Here are our contact details. Kate soon will come back on and ask you for any questions that has come up from today, but please feel free to contact me directly. I'm the Managing Director of both businesses here in Australia and in New Zealand. And if not me, our Association Insurance Australia team in Australia can be contacted on that 1800 number, or in New Zealand on that 0800 number. All emails through to promotionalproductsinsurance.com can be sent at info. So again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Hope you've got some good value out of today's session, and I look forward to seeing you at either the roadshows or the two convexes, or indeed speaking to you soon on email or the telephone. Thank you.
Thanks, Stu. That was great. That was so relevant to everyone in our industry, regardless of their position in our supply chain. There don't seem to be any questions so far, but I'm sure it's given everyone a lot to think about. So as Drew said, his details are on the screen, and Drew will be at all 4 roadshows, like he said, and the New Zealand Convex. So please drop in and say hello to him at his stand if you are after more information or need a quote. Tomorrow you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to view the recording of today's webinar and a link to view the slides as well. So that's it from us. On behalf of Drew and APA, thank you for joining us today and have a great afternoon.